Welcome to this OWHC Chats episode. As we begin our episode with Lisa Kelly, we're going to first share Lisa's formal bio and that she's been creating healthy changes in both workplace and personal clients for over 20 years through workplace wellness program training and consulting, corporate strategic planning, as well as employee training and development. Lisa's work has also included career and employment coaching, as well as nutrition and fitness training, and lastly, energy healing. She is the president of the Workplace Wellness Center of Excellence, and through her Workplace Wellness Leadership Certification Series and Executive Wellness Leadership programs, her mission is to create an innovative and collaborative landscape for global workplace wellness, which fosters employee-driven, results-oriented wellness solutions to benefit not only employers and employees, but communities at large. Lisa holds a master's degree in adult education as well as a business degree. Some of her professional certifications and achievements, to list a few, include being a certified workplace wellness specialist, a certified holistic nutritionist, as well as accomplishments with Toastmasters International. With that said, what you will hear next in this OWHC Chats interview is our conversation with Lisa Kelly, where Lisa is talking about the passion she has for workplace health and how her journey has led to her work today.
I've been in corporate. I've been a corporate trainer. I've had my own employment coaching services over the years and done a lot of government and private sector contracting in employment and training and development. And then I wanted a break. So I always had a passion for wellness, and I used to teach health classes, and been a fitness instructor. And then I did that as a certified nutritionist and personal trainer for a number of years when I took a brief break from corporate just to spend more time with my family. And I had a home-based personal training and nutrition consulting business. But then I found I missed the cognitive aspect. I missed the corporate after a few years. So I thought, how can I, really appeal to both of my areas of interest, that being corporate training and development, and then also the nutrition, the wellness, personal wellness realms. So then this was about maybe 8-10 years ago. I had kind of dabbled in corporate wellness through my nutrition business as little side gigs. And then I really felt a yearning to go full on into corporate wellness. And at the time, and still to this day, because I do a lot of work globally and a lot of work right now with corporate in corporate wellness in the US particularly. And I always find they're a little bit further advanced in corporate wellness and the buy-in from organizations than we are in Canada. So my impetus for really getting involved in corporate wellness was taking on my training and development. And then that's later evolved into several global certification programs in corporate wellness and executive wellness leadership. And then most recently in the development with a partner out of Texas in the COVID-19 Transitional Leader Recovery course. So, all that in short to say that I've really followed my passion. And as a career coach years ago, I've always really maintained that, find your why, to quote Simon Sinek, and really do what you love doing. And that that's where you're happiest, right? And so I've really been over the past 8 years, really fully involved in corporate wellness exclusively as a global program provider. And we've worked with trainees in over 11 countries and have graduated. We don't take in a lot every year in our program, so we graduated as of last year over 100 master level workplace wellness professionals. Yeah.
And Lisa, what I love about that is kind of your work and experience has touched kind of both the one-on-one level, which I imagine even through your
Excuse me.
nutritional consulting,
Yes.
so kind of like that one-on-one area, but then also on like a group level or organizational level, and speaking to groups, you also
Yes.
cover that as well. Um,
Yeah.
Before we go into the next question, just because it's such an interesting topic for anyone who's listening to this, you mentioned kind of the idea of start with why.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind just sharing a little bit more, detail, if you will, about that? Maybe someone who's listening, not to get too off track, but you
Right.
know, if they're like, oh, I've heard of that concept, start with
Mm-hmm.
why. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
well, how did you? What would you say to that individual?
Well, I would say the litmus test for me is if you get up every morning and you don't hit the snooze button because your feet hit the ground and you are just really raring to go because you can't wait for your day to start. That is how I feel every day. And I should qualify that by saying right now, because I'm launching new programs, I sometimes work 6, 7 hours, 6, 7 days a week. Now, that being said, I do practice work-life balance because I do take mini breaks and I spend time with my family and I really have worked and honed the whole work life integration concept. And I think more of us are thrown into that right now in this whole pandemic world we're in, working, hybrid or remote locations. But that being said, truly, if look to your heart and how can you utilize all your skills, but in a way that gives you joy and meaning and passion every day. Now, that's not to say that every day, God knows I do tech programs, and there's more days than not I rub my head thinking, what am I doing? Because I was not a techie, and now I'm running exclusively global tech programs, online platforms and the whole shabam. So yeah, but I love what I do, and when you love what you do, that overrides the days when you have those challenging times, right? Those challenging moments, which we do all have.
Amazing. I can only imagine how that line of thinking has so many overlaps with like inspiring champions
Oh,
in the workplace
absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
yeah, that whole side of it. Now, as we alluded to a few moments ago, you are a keynote speaker for our upcoming OWHC event. To someone who's listening to this right now, what kind of high level uh, piece of information can you share to individuals in terms of why, if they tune into that, why you can certainly add value to them?
Yeah, great question. And I just want to backstep for a second and just when all this started, when the pandemic came about, and because I have a strong leadership background, I teach leadership courses and to executives in executive wellness leadership. I really recognized a need for a new leadership model, and I that came about from interviewing 9 global senior leaders, really across the globe, and some of who came out of my executive wellness pilot program last winter. And I had this vision, and I talked to a partner I do a lot of work with, Phil Bolender out of Texas, and he's a change management and leadership expert as well. And the two of us put our heads together, and through a discussion, I came up with the concept with his help for what we call a transitional leader. And like I created an article based on the interviews with these 9 global senior leaders, and from there, like it really just spawned the idea to create a transitional leader. And I realized we had to hit the ground really quick to embrace and help support leadership in this pandemic. And so, really, we looked at this concept of a transitional leader being someone who is very adaptable and who could, whether they're in a senior leader position or whether they're a wellness professional as a consultant, whether they're a middle level manager or a frontline employee, we all have a role to play in this pandemic. And we can all, in our own right, become transitional leaders. And so, really, at the high level and even at the entry level, transitional leaders are those who can really see the big picture, who are really progressive, forward thinkers, and they're agile, they're adaptable in helping to lead in this VUCA climate that we've talked about over the past few months. They're really innovators, right? And they're cultivators of psychological capital, meaning they help to really support and foster psychological capital, which is, embracing and cultivating hope and resilience in employees. And they're very inclusive and balanced and responsive in their approach. And they're very, much facilitators of high commitment, high involvement, and of course, very much strategic thinkers and visionaries and influencers in their own right. And lastly, they're very much collectors and cultivators, sorry, of collective consciousness. So being very proactive versus reactive and getting everyone to have a sharing of the minds, because as many who will come in presumably to this keynote presentation to hear about the COVID-19 transitional leader model and what we propose in our course is that these leaders in their own selves, and every leader from, again, high level down to middle level to um, junior leaders, whoever they may be, have all had to really hit the ground running. As I said, we did not have, again, as I say in this course, there was no playbook, and you hear that often, right? So we've really had to put our ear to the ground, be very open, be very empathic as leaders with our employees, be very adaptable. And we talk a lot about these things, and then give you the tools and the resources of how to do that and to manifest that in your organizations. And some concepts of our program are very forward looking in that they're tools that are going to carry you into the winter, for example. How to do a performance assessment model or approach with your concept and assessment approach with the employees, because now we have to accommodate and hone and assess and level up in skills, a whole bunch of new skills that we probably didn't even realize need were going to be of high demand and need in organizations about 12 months ago even. So we've created a new virtual skills 360 competency model, and we actually give that in our COVID-19 transitional course. Like, the tools you get for the price point is incredible, but that's a whole other story. But it really was our honor to be able to put this course off and to be able to offer it a very what we consider a very low fee, because it's what we call a pandemic sensitive fee, and we really wanted to be able to utilize the knowledge and skills we've had over the years as change management leaders to be able to bring that to organizations. And some organizations have really killed, not kill, that's not the right word, but really put on hold their training budget, right? So some employees are paying out of pocket to do our course. So again, that's why we wanted to really make this affordable for everyone. So that's just a little bit about the pricing structure of the course. But just to go a little further then, and I'll open up for your more questions from you. But we start again looking at this transition leader model and concept, but then we go into the 4 pillars. So what does it mean to have strategic responses, right? And so we look at pillar 1 being the leadership fundamentals for leading, as I said, in this VUCA climate. And then pillar 2, what are the COVID-19 logistics needed? So we talk about moving forward plans and the safety policies and procedures. Now, I know a number of organizations already have these in place, but because our program is a continuous program, we're still going in with people who've even graduated months ago, and we're still carrying on the conversation. So it's not a program you come in, you start, and you finish. We've really kept the program ongoing, evergreen, and organic, so that people can come in and ask us questions. And so really looking at what are the virtual meeting best practices and providing you with a whole list of moving forward checklists. And we'll keep adapting them perhaps as need be as we go forward. Then pillar 3 in short is looking at the organizational culture. So what are the key imperatives for operating and cultivating high performing work cultures? How do we cultivate and foster a speak up culture or a psychologically safe work environment? And I know we've touched on this, but we really, really apply it to this pandemic era that we're in. How do we nurture cross-silo leadership to really get that inclusive, cohesive work culture in our organizations, right? And even the topics like, what are the value of formulating employee resource groups? Now, that's a new concept for some organizations. And to those coming into this who are wellness leaders, they can take a really pivotal role in organizing employee resource groups and in an online format that can really support their remote and their on-site employees. And we talk about pulse surveys, and we give you many templates for different pulse surveys that, again, you get so many tools that you can use right away, and most of them are implementable. And then lastly, in our pillar 4, we talk about employee well-being. So really kind of deep diving into what are the range of employee well-being needs in this pandemic and beyond. how do we provide solutions remotely to really help support the, what I call the COVID-19 related stress and burnout and the stressors? How do we as leaders, whatever our level is, extend compassion and empathy to really meaningfully support employees in this pandemic? And as I touched on, how do we foster psychological capital so that we're really supporting and cultivating hope, self-efficacy, resilience, and in our employees? And then we also even talk about things like creating virtual wellness buddies. And we have a program, and I have a really interesting story that I'll share because I actually have my own virtual wellness buddy right now. And truthfully, that has been such a blessing for me to support me in this pandemic. And I'll talk a little bit about, the wins I've had in working with a wellness buddy. And so that, yeah, I think that gives you a good picture of what I'll be speaking on. And of course, I just addressed everything that's in a, pretty lengthy course, but I will touch on key points, and then we will certainly, because I always like to do this, we will open up for breakout groups and then a full group debrief. So I will really plan the timing carefully so that I can touch on these key points and go, into a little bit of detail more than today in this presentation. And then we'll open up and break off into probably 4 breakout groups that touch on each of these pillars and then have a full group debrief after.
Amazing. That was a pleasure to listen to. And one of the, as I was listening to what I kind of wrote down, the theme of some of the words and sentences I wrote down, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's that, you know, well-being, wellness is so interdisciplinary in that it does include leadership, culture, employee engagement, peer support, because you mentioned all these different areas that, and what you're doing, I think what you're mentioning is that they'll complement each other.
Absolutely.
And you can't have silos.
No, absolutely. And that's why we bring up the concept of cross-silo leadership, right?
Yes.
Actually, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
And you mentioned earlier, and maybe just as a tactic for individuals that, perhaps wellness budgets are different now, but there also might be a leadership budget, and how that could also come into the picture and why it's relevant to come into the picture.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And as I alluded to earlier and spoke on, we have another upcoming executive wellness leadership program. And this COVID course is a nice springboard into that. And so we take in senior leaders. And so we are having that offering will be coming up in January. And so, for example, those who may want to do the COVID course may want to go on, if they're a senior level leader, to take this. And we're actually going to offer it again at our pilot price. So everything I do as a provider, our programs are so affordable. I always say sometimes ridiculously so, but that's where we've landed right now on our price points, because in my heart, I wanted to do this to make our programs as affordable as possible, because we deal with a lot with health coaches and the like who they don't have deep pockets to pay for programs. So, we have different certification tracks. And so, as I mentioned, our Executive Wellness Leadership Program will be a great opportunity for anyone, for example, wanting to continue on to get more training in the respects of how they can support their employees in this pandemic. Because you can be sure in our Executive Wellness Leadership Program, we're going to bring in elements from the COVID program to the executive program and really carry on the discussions in the Executive Wellness Leadership Program. And it may even require us to even adapt somehow the program material from last year, because again, we're in a whole different world right now. We're in this VUCA climate, if ever we were. For those who don't know that term, it's the term, I think it may have been coined out of Harvard, I'm not sure, but it's relating to that we are working in a volatile, uncertain, ambiguous, and very complex work environment right now, right? And I think everyone's probably shaking their heads and agreeing with me when I say that, right?
Of course. I think even VUCA was a term that was used a lot around World War II.
Yes, actually, thank you for correcting me. You are absolutely, it is previously a military term, but I think it's been embraced and really adopted, I think, from Harvard. I may be wrong, but I've heard them referenced a number of times with this, the VUCA term.
Yes. And Lisa, we'll just mention one more line of thinking here, and then we can stop the recording, and that's you also mentioning how um, the COVID-19 Transitional Leader recovery course. It sounds like
Mhm.
something you were mindful of is that times are changing, and you mentioned the
Yeah,
word adapt a few times.
right.
So it was nice to hear that, and I find, myself and individuals who I've talked to, where you can create a plan, you can create a strategy, but if it's robust to the
Yes.
point where it's things change, and then people are wondering who does what, and then nothing does end up happening. But do you mind commenting on how, I guess, it sounds like you making sure that people can be adaptable and things can be flexible, why that was top of mind and why it's extremely valuable for leaders and for those in the wellness industry?
Well, absolutely. And I was just reading some more research this morning to support something I'm working on, and it very much talks about um, everything you spoke on about the need to be adaptable. But there's something else I didn't touch on, and um, there would be, and there is probably, and probably always will be, that tendency for managers to sometimes micromanage, and not even intentionally micromanage their employees from a hybrid, from a remote working environment. And the reason I bring this up is because when we're doing that, sort of saying we're very directly saying to our employees, we don't trust you to make the right decisions, right? And to be adaptable and to be able to pivot and to do what we feel is in the best interest for yourself, for your job, for the organization. And so, one thing I'll probably talk more about, and we'll talk more about certainly in the executive program and going forward in the COVID course, is around really the whole term around empowering. And so, as a transitional leader, it's really important that you empower your employees. You tell them that I trust you implicitly. Now, you have to give them the tools and the training and the skill sets to do that, right? So, we can't shirk our responsibility there. But we really want to say to them, and we really want to manage by objectives. And so, we're managing by objectives and results and outcomes. We're not managing by FaceTime or by the clock. Okay. And so we're going to come back to the concept of the MBO concept that was very, much in the heyday, years ago, right? And really talking about, I'll leave you this one little example I thought was really neat. It was about like Telenor, it's a Norwegian telecommunications company, and they rely on what they call the tight, loose, tight philosophy. And I thought this was so neat. So to really help accelerate performance and innovation, right? And to get away from this micromanaging that it can happen, and it does happen. And I've worked in remote environments as well, and I've been in a geographically dispersed team years ago, so I know how easy it could be for a manager to feel the inclination to want to micromanage. But anyway, getting back to this Telenor company, their philosophy to accelerate performance is around tight, loose, tight, so that they're tight on goals, they're loose on how things get done, but they're tight on follow up and accountability, right? So tight on goals, loose on how it gets done, but tight on follow up and accountability. And I thought that was just such a neat model for managers. And, I know I'm speaking to wellness professionals here as well. And so, to each of you as wellness professionals, you have your own roles. You may be in charge of wellness champions or leading wellness committees. And so, it behooves you to really think about this model: tight, loose, and tight philosophy. Tight on goals, loose on how it gets done, and tight on follow up and accountability. And that, I think, is going to really sustain us into this new way of working going forward, and helping us to adopt new norms and really cultivate that culture of empowerment and trust and open communications to address key performance issues swiftly as they arise, right?
Lisa, love that tight, loose, tight. That's so interesting, and such a nice kind of framework, if you will, to really be like, okay, this is how we can go about this. This is how we can
Yes.
remember. That's the first time I heard that, so that was a pleasure
Yeah,
to.
me too. I was just one of those little nuggets you find first thing in the morning when you're researching.
Totally, totally. So Lisa, let's end on that note. And as we do, are there any other pieces of insight you'd love to share from your end as some parting thoughts for individuals about yourself and about the upcoming event in which you're a keynote speaker for?
Yeah. Well, no, thank you. I appreciate that opportunity. And there's not too much more I want to add other than the fact that I bring a breadth of skills and knowledge and experience, both from the corporate, as I said earlier, and the workplace wellness. And I think that's really served me well over the years and served me to be able to bring courses and the programs that I do to, our client groups. And I do it and I get excited. And you'll see and probably hear my energy and my passion today, and you'll certainly hear it in my presentation. And, in terms of a parting thought, as far as something they can take away. I think coming back to, again, I just love that, the tight, loose, tight philosophy. I think if you can just hold that in your mindset and really, maybe look up the Telenor company, they're a Norwegian telecommunications, and see if there's anything else written about them. This was actually coming out of a Globe and Mail document, so you might even want to look them up. But, one other last parting thought, which I thought was really nice out of this article, is that work is not a place. And so really companies need to evaluate their wellness strategies, their workplace strategies, and realize that work is not a place. It's not limited to a physical office as an enabler of work, but rather it's how we do the work, how we coalesce, how we come together, and the tools we use, we invent or we adapt and adopt, and how we use those tools with our employees, right? And use really good professional judgment and empathy and really open communications in this new, hybrid work environments that many organizations are working in.
Lisa, once again, you're making me write so much. I wrote down right away as soon as you said it. Work is not a place. Such a simple phrase, but a powerful phrase.
Yeah, and
to
again, I
end
quote
on.
that back to the
Wow.
Globe and Mail article. Like, it's not my words, but
Yeah.
I really thought it was just, yeah. And they talked in that article about setting up cross-functional teams, and that employees want to perform, but micromanaging is very counterproductive, and that's another big takeaway here, perhaps to reflect on.
Great. All right, Lisa, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for sharing more information about yourself and a sneak peek for what individuals can expect for the upcoming event. So thank you again for your
Oh,
time.
well, thank you.